be a little canning chat. I wanted to kind of touch base on a couple of things that I've got coming up, but I also wanted to touch base. I keep getting questions about headspace and that they lost headspace in their jar, and why did that happen? And I have to ask the question, most often the first question I ask is, did you hot pack or cold pack? Hot packing is always the preferred method. If you read your resource books, they're all going to tell you that, unless the fruit or the vegetable is too delicate to handle the extra cooking procedure. Like peaches fall apart if you par cook too much. I mean, you can blanch them to get the skins off, but that's really it. And then the rest should be done in the canning process. But when it comes to pressure canning, I think this is when people really have the big issues about headspace. Also, when they cold pack fruits and vegetables, they all have air in them, and so it can change the headspace when the air is released out of the fruit or the vegetable, and it can push liquid out of your jar, and then when it settles back down, you've got to change. Or your fruit or vegetable is much less in the jar. Now, when we're talking about pressure canning, I've got 17 jars of chicken here, and I'm not kidding you when I tell you every single jar has the perfect 1-inch headspace, and that's after they've come off of pressure. When you take them out of the pressure canner, they're all going to look awesome because everything in the jar is expanded. And it's another reason why you want to hot pack, because the food is already expanded when you put it in the jar to a degree, and then it finishes that expansion. But when you let it cool down, if you let it come down off of pressure on its own time, you don't rush it in any way. I don't even take the canner and put it onto a cold burner. I let the canner come down on its own. I open the canner, take the weight off. I'll open the canner and let some of the steam out slowly, then take the lid off and let that just sit and equalize for another 10 minutes. Rushing those steps will help your jars evacuate liquid right out of the jar, because they're still venting. Those lids are still venting back and forth until they create that vacuum seal. So all my jars sealed. Like I said, I've got 1 inch of headspace on every single one of them because I took the extra time and steps that it takes to make it happen correctly. And I also believe that par cooking is critical to the perfect headspace. Raw packing and not adding liquid to your jars, you always have meat sticking up out of that liquid that ends up discolored and not attractive. I don't know anybody that wants to eat gray meat when it's supposed to be browned beef chicken. I don't want to eat a piece of gray chicken. I'm pretty sure nobody else in your family would either. So the extra steps are definitely worth it. And so that I definitely would ask those questions. And then somebody was asking about Tattler lids, and I wanted to touch base on that. It's an initial investment, but these actual lids right here, I've used dozens of times. Now the gaskets, you get 10 uses out of each gasket. If I get a failed jar with a Tattler lid, I throw the gasket away and start with a new one. And I mark the gaskets. So I can take a little Sharpie marker, and each time I use it, I mark it, and that way I know how many uses I've done. So Tattler lids, if you are thinking about those, I highly recommend them. They're easy to use. They are keeping these out of the landfill, and they pay you back in just a few canning sessions. They pay for themselves, and voila. So I use them in almost every canning session, and this particular one, I didn't have any fails on any of the lids. And some of these lids, this particular lid is probably 6 or 7 years old, and I'm just trying to use up all the odds and ends. This one as well. Trying to use up all the odds and ends and get my canning supplies all in order. So guys, I hope that everybody has a great and very successful canning season this year. I have tons of stuff coming up for you. I'm going to make the Quebec meatball recipe, only I'm probably going to do them in patties again. and they just make almost like a Salisbury steak, or you can do them in meatballs and make like Swedish meatballs with it when you open the jar. And so I'll bring you along for that. I'm also going to be doing some veggies and fruits as they come into season, and so there's lots of canning videos in store for you. Okay, if you have any questions about any of this, please leave me a comment in the comment section below. And don't forget, I've got my Thrive website down below, as well as my Tupperware website. Any business is always much appreciated. We'll see you next time. Bye! And I'll leave a link from Amazon to the canner that I use. Most often, I use my All-American, and for this job, I use my 921, so I can double stack the jars.